So let's get started with what we're here to discuss today. Today, the title of our webinar today is the top 15 questions that all speakers need to ask. And I was thinking about this title as a webinar. As speakers, we tend to look for the answers as opposed to the questions. But as a coach, I'm always saying that good coaches ask good questions, because it's only when we ask the right questions do we arrive at the right answers. So I'd like to suggest maybe we start changing the questions that we're asking in order to start finding the right answers. Bruce Wade is known as the African story engineer, and he is known to those who love him as the Batman for business. All he does is based on his 7 principles of sustainable innovation. He is coach to speakers, the innovation to inventors, and the strategy to leaders. Bruce has authored over 28 books. He is a professional speaker, the past president of the Professional Speaking Association of Southern Africa, and an inductee into the Educators Hall of Fame. Bruce has spoken in over 15 different countries to tens of thousands of people, sharing his stories of innovative ideation and sustainability. Please join me in welcoming our speaker for this webinar, 15 questions all speakers need to ask, Bruce Wade.
Awesome. Good morning, good afternoon, and wherever you are, good day, and welcome to this informal education entertainment webinar. I hope you take you on a little journey. My goal is that somewhere along the line you take one new hint to add to your speaking business and maybe enhance yourself a little bit around that. But I want to kind of start off with a little story. You see, back in 1878, when we were younger, there was a big change in invention where Edison changed this megaphone, which was typically made out of rolled zinc, and he added electronics into it. And for the first time in the world, we had an electronic megaphone. And this produced 3 groups of people, or 4 groups of people. There was a group of people that really didn't care and didn't want to know about it. Then there were the people who jumped on the bandwagon and trained people on how to use this new implement called the megaphone and amplify your voice. And they had fancy workshops and courses and coaching programs to do it. And then there were the second group of users were the people who used the megaphone to amplify their expertise. And then there were these third group that just learned to squawk louder with no education, no purpose, and anything like that. Move forward a couple of years to 2004 with the invention and the rollout of Facebook, followed closely by a whole bunch of social media. And we see 4 groups of people emerge. Those people who don't care. There are not many of them on the planet anymore, which is interesting. But we have those who are jumping on the bandwagon and training people on how to use social media. You have courses left, right, center, up and down, all over the place on how to effectively use your social media. Then we get the people who use social media to amplify their genius, to be able to portray their content and roll that out there. But unfortunately, like the first invention, this invention has created a huge group of people in the third group that are just squawkers, that are squawking nonsense, uneducated stuff and information out there. And we've seen such a prolific amount of squawking since the start of the Olympics. It's been quite profound and quite sad to look at the state of the human race around the Olympics, various countries' elections and wars and information around that. So what I want to do is I want to take you on a little journey, and we're going to look at the top 15 questions all speakers need to ask. Now, some of these you probably already asking, and you're going like, I never even thought that this was a question, because it's just part of your natural talent. I will then take that on board and give yourself a big tick in that in the marks column. But maybe there's a 1 or 2 questions here that we want you to add into your daily repertoire of expertise. But maybe let's just start off with a little bit of a poem that I wrote, and I want to share that with you just to set the scene and get all sorts of updated. So here is a little poem about speaking. It goes like this. The room is set, my heart is still, my slides are saved, it's time to chill. The doors will open, the guests arrive, I will share my talk, I will come alive. Clickers will click, pens will scribe. I will tell stories to add to the vibe. I am a speaker and I will speak. From stage to stage I go each week, changing lives with new ideas, forging paths, overcoming fears. This is my destiny, to stand in the light, to raise the microphone and fight the good fight. I wrote that all by myself without any use of AI. I was quite profound. My English teacher at school would be very, very proud of me. But let's go back to where most people find themselves, trapped in this little cage. I've got a birdie for company, but nothing else. And often I speak to speakers who are sitting there and going like, I've got all these resources, but I'm trapped. I've got all these ideas, but I feel trapped. And it's mostly because we are not unpacking what we have, and we're not knowing the technology and the processes to put ourselves out into that market. So hopefully these questions that you're going to learn will transform you from a prison state to piles of moolah that are going to start flowing into your organization. So let's go and start off there. So what I've done is I've broken these down into 3 different categories. I've got 5 questions to ask before a gig, 5 questions to ask during a gig, and 5 questions to ask after a gig. So you've got 3 sets of 5. We'll go through them individually and we'll pause for questions at the end of each one. Do not try and copy all these questions down. Put your pens down, relax, pick up your cup of coffee or glass of wine, depends on where you are, and chill, because we will be giving you all these questions afterwards, and there will be a couple of screen print times that you can take, and I'll let you know when those are coming up to pick up your phone and take a photograph. But we do have a handout with these. I'd rather you write down the aha moments than try to get down all the questions. So don't worry about writing them down. Let your brain relax and absorb some of the information that we have. Right, so let's start off there. 5 questions to ask before a gig, before you start. The first question is simply, what is the theme of the event? It seems such an obvious question to ask, but I've seen so many people, and I sometimes forget to ask this, and you arrive up there and go like, oh, I didn't know what the dress code was when you arrive at an event. It's exactly the same, is arriving at an event to speak when you don't know what the theme is, you don't know what the genre is, you don't know what the effects is. So these 5 questions help set you up on the stage for that professionalism to be able to stand and say, I am owning this room. I am going to make an impact into that. These are questions that you ask up front of the event organizer or the client, the paying client, depends of who they might be, depends on who's contracted you. But ultimately, you want to get to the real source. You don't want to necessarily get to the event organizer or the MC or the secretary of somebody who's acting on behalf of this. I always like to do a briefing with the CEO or somebody that's actually commissioned this event, and you're able to get down and ask these. Tell me what the theme is, because then you can start building that theme into your presentation. Now, there are the category of speakers, and we've seen them. And I used to believe that I was one of them until I realized that I was doing myself a big disservice. There's a category of speakers that arrive there and say, this is what I speak on. I will speak on what I speak on, and you will just have to fit in with me. And I will do my keynote exactly, kadunk, 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 cookie cut over and over again. And it's up to the MC to segue this. It's up to the event organizer to then arrange their agenda around there. I think it's a bit of a give and a take on sort of on all ends, and it's a matter of organizing. But this is a good conversation that we can have, is what is the theme of the event? Moving on, there's who is the audience? And this is an interesting one, because often I've spoken at an event where I've engaged with a company, but the audience is a completely different environment. In fact, I've just come from a briefing just before this one where it's exactly that. Is the organization is very different from the audience, almost 180 in fact, and we are having to apply the audience perspective in a different category, in a different direction than where we are aiming at who the paying client is. And it's an interesting one there. So we've got the audience question, knowing who that audience is, getting as much information as you can. I'm a good cyber stalker. I've got a couple of processes. I can get information on people that they didn't even know information was about. And we can put all that information. I love getting that inside information, and also who is the other speakers that are speaking. I always love to do a little bit of deep dive into that. So you want a full personnel profile portfolio before you arrive at a meeting. The larger the event, the more you've got to dig and the more you've got to dive into these ideas. So we go on there. What do we want your audience to feel and think after my keynote? Now, this is a kind of a variation of what I heard a while ago from another speaker that was sharing this. And I thought it was a really good idea. I always say, like, what I want them to think. But he was saying, no, you've got to have feeling as well. You've got to ask that. What do you want your audience to think and feel after my keynote? And it's a really interesting question, because when we create keynotes and we train people on, what is the purpose of the keynote? But it's all very well having your purpose for your keynote, but what does the client want their audience to think and feel after the keynote? And you might be interested to find out that it might not be the same as your agenda. But if you are able to build that into your planning, into this environment, you are going to get some really interesting feedback and some interesting ideas. So what do you want your audience to feel and think after your keynote? Not answered by you as the speaker, but answered by your paying client, the event organizer, or the CEO of the organization, or the organization themselves. And very interesting just to work that out and put that down on paper and have that as a focus on your compass point to get to. All right. Followed onto that as well, and I think this is where a lot of speakers fail, because we arrive, we perform, we put the microphone down, we thank the audience, we get off the stage, we drink a mouthful of water and dash off home. But we never want necessarily to follow up, because firstly, it's too much hard work. You don't want to have to write a report. You don't want to have to gather information. You just want to go on and speak, because, hey, speaking is what we do, and speakers like to speak. The follow-up paperwork is often a big hassle. But it's interesting there, if you look at there and you ask the client, what action do you want your audiences to take once I've finished my keynote? Then you can build that into that call to action part. If you want them to complete a form, do this, do that, whatever it is there, again, not your agenda, but the client's agenda as well. We're going to come to what you're going to be asking a little bit about yourself in a moment. So let's look at the last of this question. What 3 phrases should they repeat? I practiced that. Not an easy sentence to say in a hurry. What 3 phrases do you want your audience to to say, to mention, or hashtag afterwards to post with. And I've never actually done this with 3 different phrases. I've always said, what thought is it? And writing these things, I thought if we could create 3 phrases, and I wrote this, and I'm doing a speech later on, and I was thinking about, how do I incorporate that in there? If you had to give 3 different phrases, and you'll see by the questions that come just now, maybe they could be answered then. So hold this thought. Let's look at this. Let's come back to this. And maybe there's some wisdom into this whole idea that we want to actually put words into the mouths of other people, not just thoughts into their head. And we can unpack those. All right, let's look at the 5 questions to ask during your speech. Now, this is while you're on the stage. This is while you're doing your sage, magician, wise man, creativity, inventor thing, while you're pounding the floorboards of that stage and playing around there. The first question is, who can identify with this problem? Now, this is an interesting question because we are selling as stage people, aren't we? We up on the stage, we are selling, whether we're selling ideas or concepts or actions or books at the back or, fluffy unicorn toys, whatever it is that we've got there, we are selling something to our audience. We are persuading them for a change of mindset. And the first question that you've got to identify, get answered is who here can identify with this problem? Because what that is, it's an experiential hook between speaker and audience, and it's that connectivity. If you fail at this question in your keynote, the rest of your keynote is irrelevant. You might as well be speaking about fern spots on your pot plant, and nobody else is really going to care. But if you're able to connect with that, your first 2 minutes of your speech has to be asked and answered. Who here can identify with this problem and get at least 80% of the audience connected to? It's very easy to see the reaction of an audience when they answer this yes, because they do certain things. They put their phones down. They stop looking at their emails on their laptops. They lean forward and they pick up a pen and pull in a little notepad. Then you know that they are now on board. And they online, these are the people who turn their cameras off and go like, oh, I'm not really interested. And, do this. You can see some of the people. Look at George now. Just everyone look at George. George is connected. Okay? Me and George, we like this now because he's leaning forward. He's got a hand on his chair. We are engaged. And George, thank you very much for your wonderful participation, because it's great. I'm just really envious of the wonderful palm trees blowing behind you, even if it's not real. But just unpacking this whole thing, this is where we are. We need to ask and answer this question, because once we got that connectivity, we can go forward and answer the next question is, who thinks this problem can't be solved? And that is an interesting question. Because if they think it can be solved, they are not interested in buying. Have you ever been to a craft market and you walk around and go like, oh, look at all these pretty things. And in the back of your mind, you go, I can do that. And therefore, you do not buy. If you think you can make what they have done, you will never buy. But if you sit at a craft market and go like, that's amazing, I could never do that, then you will buy. And the worst thing, if you look at the way we teach people to market at stores and Christmas markets and craft markets and little arts and craft market, is you've always got to impress the people to a point that they will think that they cannot do what you are selling. Therefore, they will buy. And it's very important to sit there. You've got to make the problem not overcomplicated. You don't want to create all sorts of stuff there, but you've got to make the problem important enough and strategic enough in the minds of your audience that they firstly identify with it, and they know that my resources, my current mindset, I think this problem cannot be solved by what we have. Therefore, the third question comes in, and it says, who thinks I am the solution? And this is on the stage. If you take 3 paces to the right, you stand, you turn at 63 degrees to your audience, and you look them in the eye and say, I am the solution. Then you've got your connection with your audience. And that is a strategic move within a keynote that you have to do. I love that point in a keynote. And actually, I kid you not about the 3 steps. 68 degrees might be a few off there, but it's a wonderful stage where you can sit there and people go like, wow, this is hard. And you walk out away from the center of the stage. You position yourself in that place of power to the kind of left of the audience, your right, and you stand there and look them in the eye and say, I am the solution. And you then put up your blueprint up on the screen, or your 3 steps to greatness, or your pattern for making cross-stitch unicorns, or whatever it is that you are then providing that solution into your audience. And then they're able to sit there and go, well, that is brilliant. And you ask the next question is, who needs to know more about what I am offering? And this is when we start polarizing your audience. Now, I want to pause here a little bit, because I remember clearly some seriously psychological down, dark times in my life as a speaker and a workshop facilitator. And all you had to do to knock the socks off me emotionally was to book for a meeting and not pitch, or book for a workshop and not arrive. I used to lay out the chairs. I got like 45 people for a workshop. I get the room ready. I lay out 47 chairs because I'm ever hopeful. And I actually walk around and I touch each chair, and I was like imposing my magic into the chair. And I'd go around and going like, this room is going to be special and stuff. And then 20 people arrive. And I wouldn't be interested in the 20 people. I'd be interested in the other half that didn't pitch. And I would sit there and I would emotionally laminate about how horrible my life was and how crappy I was as a trainer and a coach. And I would beat myself up emotionally. And I'm sure the 20 people there would sit there and go like, why am I here? Why didn't I just not pitch like the other? Because clearly this person's not engaged. And I want to apologize to all the people in my past that I've done that to. Now I've learned that if 100 people rock up and there is one person there who's interested, I am happy, because I'm focusing all my energy on that 100 people. I do not care for people who are not wanting what I have to offer. And I've got over that myself. It's been huge. Therapy, gin, shock therapy, lots of walks on the beach, lots of sunsetting, lots of throwing rocks into a pool to get rid of emotion, all that sort of stuff. It's all work now. I am now a mature, almost adult person at the age of almost 60, able to cope with rejection from my audience without taking it personally. And I think I'm at the stage where I'm now getting to a point where it's okay. And I can polarize an audience very, very well, because I'm now asking who here wants to know more about what I'm offering, and the following question, who wants to take action today? Now I'm segmenting my polarization. And I'm wanting to move people again there, because a lot of people go, this is brilliant. Okay, yeah, but not today. And I'm going, that's awesome. I'm not interested. I'm only interested in people who want to take action today. I don't care if I've sparked a whole thing. I don't care if I've scratched an itch or opened up a wound or, made you aware of all these things. That's part of what I do, but now I'm focusing in, and I want to know who I want to interact with taking this forward. So I'm quite happy to focus in on the one person out of 1,000 in the room, and to be able to there, because it's that one person that then is going to get all my focus, all my energy going forward onto that. And I do not have to waste any emotion or therapy or drink gin to get over the 99 that didn't. And it's okay with me. All right, so let's get into the last 5 questions. I'm just worried about the time here as well because we've got some stuff to do. So let's get through these. The first question after is, who here wants to connect with me on LinkedIn? All right. It might not be LinkedIn, it might be TikTok, it might be this or that or any of the other stuff there. LinkedIn seems to be the preferred place, but it's not just who wants to connect with me, is who wants to leave me a glowing recommendation. And I would ask that if you've liked this session, that you go to my LinkedIn and you go to Bruce Wade in LinkedIn and find me and write a recommendation on how wonderful this was for you. And you can do that. Or if you're not connected with me on LinkedIn, then please do connect and we can have a chat, because LinkedIn is where we do business as adults. As mature adults, without complaining about life and what's happening with squirrels, and look at a picture of my breakfast, and irrelevant stuff like that. So LinkedIn is always the stuff where you want to direct. This is where you want to connect with your audience. The rest of the questions gets directed back to your client. And this one is, with whom do I debrief or report to? So once you've done a talk to an audience on behalf of a client or a organization or a company or a conference, whatever it is there, it's always very interesting to have a chance to debrief with the client. Firstly, you get to hear the reactions and hopefully they'll go, oh my goodness, we had so many wonderful positive ideas. You know, women were sending love notes, men with, wanting your contact details, offering their keys to their car and wanting golf sessions and all these things. But you also get to hear a little bit of feedback about how they perceived you and how you met the brief up front. The problem with speakers is the faster we get out of the room, the less we learn, because we do not get feedback based on the brief. It's like cooking food and then putting it on the table and then leaving the place for the people to eat. You have no idea if you put the right amount of salt in there. Okay, because if you wait for feedback or some form of circular conference, circular conversation, then that you're going to get. So you need to know who you're going to debrief and or report to, even if it's just on the phone. Yesterday I spoke at your event and it was amazing. I just want to tell you a few things and how we are going on from there. Your second question is, based on my talks and report, what action is required? You see, this is the upsell. This is the stuff where we now pushing into the next level. So based on the 3 points that I raised about sustainability or innovation in your organization, what action do you think is required for your organization to take? Where are we going? What is going to be able to do that? Followed closely by the next thing, what from my offering, will best suit your needs? I offer workshops, I offer consultations, I offer assessments, I offer coaching, I offer to take your executive team to Mauritius, to meet Chantel and spend a week on the beach debriefing your trauma or whatever it is. These are the different offerings that we have, and to be able to do this. And if you don't have any offerings, boy, are you better equipped to make up an offering so quickly right there on the spot. Because the more you do this, the more you're able to upsell, and you become more than just a speaker. You become a professional facilitator, speaker, coach, and everything else in between, because we're trying to move away from the gig economy to a proper, wholesome business model that is going to work with us. And then we're going to do the final question, which is something that I've been profoundly bad at. But every single time I've asked this, I have always got feedback for another speaking gig. And every time I haven't asked it, I haven't got it. So you know what happens is Bruce Wade speaks at our annual conference, and 6 months later, they go, oh, we need a speaker for our annual conference. And people go, oh, yeah, you know that guy, Bruce, he was great. No, but we've had Bruce. Should we have somebody else? And you can see that's a natural conversation that would happen in and around the planning. They would go like, oh, but we've had Bruce, but we don't want Bruce again. We're going to do that. But if you go to them afterwards and say, I spoke at your conference yesterday, here's my report back. Can you book me for next year? And they'll go, Bruce, you're amazing. We really want you next year. And you know what that does? It eliminates that conversation somewhere between now and next year, or now and next month, or something. And one of my greatest upsells, a simple sort of thing, that is that I've done this for your Cape Town office. Would you want me to roll this out in a national roadshow? And people go like, that's a good idea. Why don't we do that? So these are the conversations that you have. While the iron is hot, you've got to strike it. While the pot is hot, put another fried egg in it, whatever metaphor that you want to use there. This is where you've got to do that, because while they love you, you need to then book and secure your next meeting, because it's harder for them to go, oh, we've already secured Bruce. Let's phone him and tell him that we don't want him, and then we can choose someone else. They're going to really struggle with that, but it's easy for them to say, oh, we've had Bruce speak. Let's have somebody else. And I know we want to share the love amongst other speakers, but if you can secure an annual gig at a conference in an exotic place every single year for at least 5 years, you are doing really good, because referrals will come out of that. Because the nice thing about it, CEOs move, C-suite executives move to different companies. And you know what they're going to say? Geez, this last company, we had Bruce speak for 3 years. He's good. Why don't we bring him in for this one as well? And there we go. Ka-ching, ka-ching, ka-ching. And we go all the way to the bank with that. So those are the 5 questions to ask and answer. We go, all 15 questions up on the screen for you to screenshot, take pictures of. But thank you very much for your attention. I trust that this has been a leg up, a open door, a gentle breeze through your hair on a hot day to bring relief to you all. So thank you very much for listening.